Hi, my name is Lindsey Lawson, and I'm a sustainability consultant with the Green Engineer. Today, I'll be presenting a brief analysis of the BERDO 2021 data that I worked on with my colleague Pedro Escobar. As a quick refresher, BERDO is the City of Boston's Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance, and it sets requirements for large buildings that are over 20,000 square feet or more than 15 residential units to reduce their greenhouse emissions over time, eventually to zero in 2050. The first round of reporting is available online, showing the 2021 data, and that's what we'll be diving into today. So here's an overview of the data that's available from 2021 reporting buildings, and we're using this information to answer 5 questions that were interesting to us based on the work we do. There are certainly other questions that could be answered with this information. First of all, we wanted to know when the average building will fall out of compliance with the BERDO carbon emission intensity requirements. We focused on 5 major building use types that you can see here in 5 different colors. We have college university, office, K-12 schools, laboratory, and multifamily. And in the dashed lines, you can see the average carbon emission intensity that we calculated based on the buildings that I've reported. And in the solid bars, you can see the carbon emission intensity requirements set by BERDO decreasing over time from 2025 to 2050. And our takeaway here is that the average building is compliant with BERDO CEI targets just through 2029. And starting in 2030, the buildings will either need to start making alternative compliance payments or be retrofit to hit the targets. Next, we want to know how many of the reporting buildings are already all electric and what the average building source energy mix looks like. We could see that there's a relatively low amount of all electric buildings so far. The lowest are in K-12 and laboratories. We see only 3% of buildings all electric. And on the high end, in offices, we see that 16% of buildings are all electric. Taking a closer look at what the energy mixes look like in each of these use types, we see that K-12 schools have the, on average, highest percentage of gas use at 72%, with offices at the lowest, 24%. And overall, we see steam making up a pretty small portion of the pie in terms of energy use in Boston, but laboratories are the highest steam users, with the average building using 11% of their energy from steam. We also wanted to see whether there was a difference in EUI based on the year the building was built. So we separated our buildings out into 3 different time periods, the 1800s, the 1900s, and 2000 to 2021. We were expecting to see that EUIs would improve over time across the board. We do see that in the K-12 school and multifamily categories, but not in the others. Our hypothesis for why this is the case is that there are more equipment-intensive workspaces in college, university, office, and laboratories now than there were 100 to 200 years ago, and also potentially higher window-to-wall ratios. The other piece here that adds ambiguity is we don't know when or if these buildings have been renovated, so that makes us take this whole graph with a grain of salt. Next, we want to look at the variance in energy use intensity across buildings of the same type. Are we seeing a relatively close distribution, or is there a wide range of EUIs? We are just going to look at office buildings tonight for the sake of time, and what we can see here is that there's a relatively close packed distribution from an EUI on the low end of 4 to the 50th percentile at 54. But then we have a really wide distribution in that upper 50th percentile from an EUI of 54 through an EUI of 172. There's relatively fewer buildings in this long tail, but a relatively wider spread. So we have this long tail of underperforming office buildings. And finally, are buildings in Boston performing better than the national average? We can say that yes, they are when we looked at CBEX and Energy Star data. And we would expect to see this gap get even wider as BERDO alternative compliance payments come into effect. Thank you.